As I was beginning in therapy, I had a big dream. I was in Uluru, Central Australia. A dream that I'm at Uluru. There's an old Aboriginal man playing a guitar, playing a song on the guitar. There's a young woman in the bath next to him. I'm struck by the colours, the blue of the sky, the red of the earth, the green of the vegetation. The song he's singing is a simple song. It's beautiful. It's like he's hearing the song and then playing it with simple chords. I'm enchanted by the beauty of the song. This dream made me sit bolt upright. And I read somewhere where it was said that the dreams that you have at the beginning of the analysis are important. There's some significance to the dreams that you have at the beginning. And this dream has always had a kind of a fascination for me. I think, one thing about, I don't know, I haven't had that many, what I would call big dreams, but I've had a few and they stay with you forever. They're very mysterious. And sometimes I've noticed, years later, I've read something or seen something else written and it takes me back to that dream. It's like a mystery, it's like one of those babushka dolls. It's kind of like you get this dream that made me sit bolt upright, but you don't really, I knew that it was important, but I had no idea what that dream was really. And then it's like, the babushka doll bit is that there's this kind of, over the years, perhaps there's something else inside of it. And there's something else inside of it. There's like layers, and it not only stays with you, but it's kind of working on you for years and years and deepening within the dream. But at the time, I knew it was a big dream, but what was the dream wanting to say? And the first thing I have to say about Uluru is in Central Australia. Everyone's probably seen that picture of the great red rock in the centre of Australia. And in a way, it's our church here. In England they have Westminster Abbey, and the French have the Chartres Cathedral. But Uluru in the centre of Australia is like our natural cathedral. It's kind of like our sacred centre in Australia. And I think that's one thing I would say also about this dream, is that the sacred shows up where you least expect, in unusual places. Like I remember, I grew up in the country of Western Australia, and I remember that the priest, the Church of England priest, used to come around and visit my father, and they'd drink and smoke and tell jokes. They were in the war. They were both in the Second World War. And even as a kid, I used to think, the priest was like an ordinary knockabout bloke. I don't know, maybe for many people, in a way, what I'm trying to say is the sacred is meant to be carried by, in our culture, the Christian church, But to me, there wasn't much feeling for the sacred, let's say, from that institution. And then, with this dream, it's like there's something old, this memory of something old in Australia. What you know, Jung might call the archaic or the primordial or whatever. You know, Uluru is that place for us here. And after I had this dream, you know, a few years later, I actually went to Uluru. It does have it's got that sense about it, that sense of awe. But the sacred shows up where you don't expect. And there was a movie made a long time ago by Baz Luhrmann called Australia, and I don't know that I would thoroughly recommend it. But I think one thing it had this idea behind it, which was a really powerful idea. That in this new country, Australia, there's this old sound, this old ancient sound, the Aboriginal sound. And, you know, that's what I would say about this song, that it reminded me of that, what is it, that kind of ageless and timeless past. And I remember hearing, you know, that in Aboriginal culture, there's this idea of the song lines that they come out of, you know, like Uluru's at the centre, and the song lines are like dreaming tracks, as they're sometimes called. They crisscross the continent, the Aboriginal dreaming, connecting land and sky and water. And it is said that ancestral beings travelled these song lines, leaving their wisdom and knowledge behind. So it reminds me of something ancestral, and maybe an ancestral wisdom. The Aboriginals were like our first poets, really, here. And the man in this dream was like, you know, Jung's 2 million-year-old man, the wise old man, maybe. The first Adam was made out of clay. It reminds of the end, you know, the ancestors, but then also in the Aboriginal culture, you know, they had the shamans who, well, there's a particular kind of shaman in Aboriginal culture, the song man, you know, who through song and music conveys the dream. That's what this dream reminds me about. There's a fantastic organisation in Australia, David Page, the composer, he started the Bangarra Dance Company. And one thing he's done, or he did, he's passed on that, but he was called a songman, and he drew on the old stories, the old myths of Aboriginal culture, but put them into a contemporary dance. It's kind of like he drew on the old language, the old traditions, the traditional old stories, song, myths, and then put them in a contemporary form. And so it reminds of, this dream reminds me of the old and the new. It's like, I think, you know, one way I've changed from reading Jung in particular is the sense of the old, the archaic, how the new kind of comes from the very old. You know, I think when I was much younger, you know, you think you're younger, very progressive, and it's all about the future. and one is not that interested in the past, but maybe from my exposure or my experience of Jung, that this idea of how we are kind of nourished from our ancestral past, that's become a really important thing for me. And I read something, this is from another culture, and it's from Peter Kingsley. He wrote this. He said, in the language of ancient Greek poetry, the word for road and the word for song, oimos and oime, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing those exactly correctly, by the way. Those words are almost identical. They have the same origin. The poet's song was quite simply a journey into another world, a world where the past and future are as accessible as the present. And this journey was his song. Those were the times when the poet was a shaman. The words shamans use as they enter the state of ecstasy evoke the things they speak about. The poems they sing don't only describe their journey, they are what makes the journey happen. So that was written by Peter Kingsley, but in a way, that's very much aligned to the song Man. And then many, many years later, I heard someone say that in Indigenous cultures, there was sometimes this idea that each person was born with a song, and that song would be sung to them throughout their life. But each person was born with a particular song. It's kind of like, to put it in Jungian terms, that's the individuation to live out that song. It's like a powerful idea, and there's also something about in all of this. Like, I get excited when I read some of those things where people talk about music of the spheres. There are people that talk about the kind of sound of the harmony of the spheres, sound. It strikes me that sometimes within our culture, I remember a long time ago when I worked in the corporate sector, there was a lot of people, a lot of NLP practitioners at the time, and they spoke about three modalities, the visual people, the auditory people, and the more, kinesthetic, feeling-oriented people. And it strikes me that we often talk about, there are many visual people that speak in images, and there are many of the more kinesthetic, feeling-oriented people who write and talk or whatever. And from this dream, it took me back to like the sound, the original sounds, and I think it's a very powerful thing. I can see times in my life, like I remember when I first went to India, and also when I first heard the word Om, and it had quite a big impact on me. And then I read that Om was, it meant the original sound of the universe. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes sound is a powerful medium. I guess anyone that's involved in music knows that, but how it can be a powerful transformative agent. And the old man in this dream is connected to the divine of the sky, but he's also firmly rooted in the earth. Maybe the old man speaks to something old or indigenous within ourselves. Recently, I spoke to someone and they were speaking about reawakening the indigenous sensibilities of the Western psyche, and I can get that. So there's that kind of like that indigenous person within also, who's wanting to be reawakened. There's an indigenous aspect of the psyche, an archaic aspect of the psyche that needs to be reawakened. And it's the anima mundi that we might need to reawaken in the soul of the world that is alive and in soul. Man or woman has become isolated in from the cosmos segment. Maybe that's why there is so much modern disenchantment. It's like to reach back into the old is also to reach back into the world with the soul, the anima mundi. And there's something about this primary idea of openness, to be open to the song of the world, to be open to the soul of the world. That, it strikes me that so much of our culture has been built on the directed thinking, the will, the, willfully directed thinking, that so much now seems to be more important to be more open, to be more attuned, to be more receptive, to be able to hear more of the song of the world. And there's an important point in this dream for me. The old man is in between. He's in between the wide blue sky of the spirit and the red of the earth. He's in the middle of the world of the spirit and the earth. And I think that, even in Neoplatonism, that the soul is in like the middle between the spirit and the earth or the body. And that idea of the soul being somewhere in the middle. So not just being all towards the spirit, but then not just totally 100% on the ground either. It speaks to me, it speaks towards an orientation towards life, to be open, to let the soul come through, to approach life by getting out of the way and to let the soul come through. I remember when I was growing up in the country of Western Australia, there were lots of Aboriginal kids there. And one day I saw a kid and he was listening to a song on the radio and he picked up the guitar and slowly began to play that song by ear. And that's what this old man was doing. He was playing by ear. It's the old man in the stream. It's like he's hearing the music or catching the music from the divine world and bringing it into song. To sing is to enchant, I read. It's like the song is our first enchantment. And also, I remember reading somewhere that enchantment was our first medicine. It's like these old songs, this old sound. It's like our first enchantment and our first medicine. As I said, I went to Uluru a few years after I read this dream. I had this dream, and it was a powerful experience. And one thing they had there, in the desert surrounding Uluru, they had something called Dinner by the Stars, and they had kind of tables with white tablecloths, and they served a very lovely dinner, and then a lady told stories about the old Aboriginal astrology, the way they saw the sky, the way they saw the stars. And she spoke of how Aboriginal people saw the different constellations. You know, it's a strange thing in Australia that when they first came to Australia, they said, "Terra nullius," this land belongs to no one. But it's so wrong in a way. And when you think even that there was that ancient Aboriginal astrology, unique astrology to the Aboriginal people. This land had belonged to the Aboriginal people for hundreds of thousands of years, and they had their own view of the stars and the constellations.